Have you ever imagined that the most dangerous figures in the Bible are not only men? Athaliah, the Blood Queen, shows that behind thrones, seductions, and dark decisions, there were women who did not hesitate to destroy entire families to gain power. Athaliah was not just a king's wife, she was an ambitious, cruel woman, willing to do anything to take the throne of Judah. Her reign is remembered as one of the darkest and most tyrannical in biblical history. But what did she do to secure her place in power? Get ready, because today you will learn the story of Athaliah, the Queen of Darkness, who did not hesitate to kill her own family to become queen. But before we start, subscribe to the Discípulos de Biblia channel, like the video, and comment below what you think about the path of this relentless woman. We want to know your opinion, and of course don't forget to activate the bell to receive all notifications. Let's begin. Daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, Athaliah was forged in one of the darkest legacies of the Bible. Jezebel, her mother, was known for her ferocity and boundless ambition. She was a queen who manipulated kingdoms, persecuted prophets, and brought the worship of Baal to the corners of Israel. Athaliah grew up immersed in this environment of corruption and oppression. From an early age, she learned that the throne is not given, but taken. To conquer power, anything was valid. At that time, Israel was divided into enemy kingdoms. In the north, Israel, and in the south, Judah. The throne was sacred, but also a battlefield. Athaliah knew that to survive in a world where men decided the fate of the kingdoms, she would need to be more cunning than anyone. Slowly, Athaliah began to infiltrate the royal courts. She married Joram, the king of Judah, and became queen, but her mind was not focused only on marriage. Athaliah knew that in Judah, the line of David still held strength, and she wanted to break this line of succession. She would become the only sovereign. When Ahaziah, Athaliah's son, died, the kingdom of Judah was left in suspense. But Athaliah, cold and calculating, did not hesitate for a second. She knew that with her son's death, the throne of Judah was vulnerable, and she could not allow any legitimate heir to be a threat to her power. The line of David needed to be erased once and for all, and she would be the only sovereign. With a steel gaze, Athaliah turned to her guards and officers and said with chilling coldness, "Kill them all, leave no one. No blood of David should survive." The words left her lips with a deep chill that not even the wind dared to touch her orders. She knew her safety depended on eliminating all heirs. "Kill them all," she repeated without hesitation, without mercy. Her grandchildren, her own children, anyone who could still contest her throne had to be eradicated. There was no room for weakness or compassion. There was no room for feelings. Athaliah was determined. She would rule Judah with an iron fist, and no one, not even her own blood, would stop her rise. The guards marched through the palace corridors, their steps echoing off the walls as the heirs of Ahaziah were taken. Athaliah watched with impassive eyes, as if every life that was extinguished was just another piece in her game of power. Every life taken became a decree, a step towards her own dominance over Judah. Athaliah, with a heart of stone, knew that no mercy would be offered. She commanded without emotion every blow, every death, until the last heir of Ahaziah was exterminated. She was alone on the throne, but now she possessed all the power, with blood on her fingers and an empty soul. But there was a secret Athaliah did not know. While she made death her path to power, the last legitimate heir of David was being saved, hidden within the temple's walls, far from the eyes of the tyrant queen. The fate of Joash, the last son of Ahaziah, would not be sealed by his grandmother's cruelty. As Athaliah carried out her cruel orders, eliminating all the legitimate heirs of David's line, there was one life that remained: a baby. The last heir, Joash, innocent, but his life was in great danger. It was a miracle that he was still alive. Then, in an act of courage and desperation, Jehosheba, Ahaziah's sister, saw what was happening. She knew that if Athaliah found Joash, he would be destroyed along with all the other heirs. Without hesitation, she ran through the dark palace corridors, her heart pounding fiercely against her chest. Jehosheba knew that Judah's fate was in her hands, and Joash was the last hope. Breathing heavily, she approached the room where Joash was hidden, wrapped in simple cloth, so small, so vulnerable. She took him in her arms, the pressure of her fingers holding him with the strength of a desperate woman, tears in her eyes and a broken heart. Judah's future was in her arms. Jehosheba, with the child still in her arms, moved quickly through the dark corridors, her steps silent but full of urgency. She knew that if she were caught, Joash's death would be certain. But she also knew that God had set a plan for that boy. Joash would not die there. In a nearly stealthy move, Jehosheba entered the temple, the last place Athaliah would ever think to look. The Levites and priests who were there, men of faith and courage, looked at Jehosheba with a mix of admiration and fear. But they knew there was no other choice. Joash was Judah's future. Jehosheba, with Joash in her arms, took him to the sacred refuge of the temple. The place that was meant to be a shelter for God was now becoming a shelter for hope. With a steady breath, she handed the boy to the high priest Jehoiada, who knew that this baby was the key to restoring the line of David. Joash was safe, but the fate of Judah was still far from guaranteed. While Athaliah continued her reign of terror, blind to what was happening inside the temple, Joash was protected in the shadows. He grew up in secret, knowing, without understanding, that the divine promise sustained him. The temple, the last vestige of true faith, now held the last legitimate heir of Judah. While Athaliah ruled Judah with an iron fist, the future of the kingdom was forming in the shadows of the temple. Joash, the last legitimate heir of David's line, grew up far from his tyrant grandmother's sight, hidden in the safest place that could exist, the temple of Jah. He was cared for and guided by Jehoiada, the high priest, who with wisdom and faith prepared the boy not only to be a king, but the king of Judah. During the first years of his life, Joash was educated among the sacred corridors of the temple, hearing the songs of worship and breathing the faith in Yahweh. He grew up among Levites and priests, learning about justice, truth, and the divine promise that had been given to David. Joash, although still young, was prepared to understand that one day he would need to restore the faith of Judah and lead his people. When Joash turned 7, the time to restore the throne of Judah arrived. Jehoiada, the priest, gathered the leaders and the faithful of Judah and organized the coup that would give the boy king the power to take his rightful place on the throne. The people who had suffered under Athaliah's tyranny saw a new hope arise. Joash was proclaimed king in the temple before all. The people applauded, sang, and rejoiced, for they knew that with Joash's arrival, true faith would be restored. Violence and idolatry that had corrupted the kingdom would finally be destroyed. But hearing the sound of the proclamation, Athaliah immediately knew her reign of terror was coming to an end. She ran toward the temple, intending to destroy any attempt to restore the line of David. When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and praising the king, her heart froze. She could not believe what she heard, the sound of joy, of triumph, of redemption. She knew Joash had been proclaimed king, and that was the end of her reign. Athaliah ran to the Lord's temple, her mind filled with rage and despair. She had to see with her own eyes what was happening. She looked at what was happening before her eyes and saw the king standing in the customary column. Around him were the singers, the trumpeters, and the people of Judah rejoiced, blowing the trumpets and acclaiming the legitimate king. Athaliah saw what she feared. The throne she had stolen was now returned to the rightful heir, and the people no longer feared her. In an act of desperation and humiliation, Athaliah tore her clothes. With eyes full of fury, she screamed toward the temple, "Treason, treason!" Her words echoed through the temple, but contrary to what she expected, no one ran to help her. The people who had once feared her now despised her tyranny. It was then that Jehoiada, the high priest with God's authority, ordered that justice be done. He looked at the captains of the 100, the military leaders who were over the troops, and said, "Take her outside among the ranks and kill her with the sword." For the priest had said, "Do not kill her in the house of the Lord." With clear and inflexible orders, the guards took Athaliah. She tried to fight, tried to scream, tried to cling to her last power, but there was no more room for weakness or oppression. Athaliah was dragged out of the temple with no more strength to resist. She was taken outside the sacred walls, where her tyranny would finally be extinguished. Athaliah, who once made the people of Judah live in fear, was now being stripped of her authority and captured by divine justice. She was taken to the entrance of the king's house at the horse gate, where the sentence was carried out. She died there, not as a queen, but as a woman who tried to destroy the line of David and was destroyed by her own arrogance. God's justice prevailed, and the people of Judah, finally freed from Athaliah's tyranny, were able to begin rebuilding their faith and their kingdom. The throne was restored, and with Athaliah's death, Joash's reign as the legitimate king of Judah began. With Athaliah's death, the reign of Judah was finally restored. The people who had once lived under the rule of fear and tyranny now experienced freedom and hope. Joash, the boy Athaliah tried to destroy, became the legitimate king of Judah. And with that, the temple. Athaliah's story serves as a warning that while power without justice may seem invincible for a time, it always comes to an end. Athaliah's reign, based on violence and betrayal, crumbled, and true justice prevailed. The throne of Judah would not be overthrown by force or by the shadow of tyranny, but by faith and the promise of God. Athaliah's story also teaches us a powerful lesson about the sovereignty of God. Even when everything seemed lost, God preserved the line of David and used Joash to restore the kingdom. Evil may last for a time, but divine justice will always find its way. What lesson can we take from all this? That in times of darkness, the light always finds a way to shine, and no matter how powerful the enemies are, God always has a plan to restore justice and truth. If you were moved by the story of Athaliah and Joash and want to know more about other stories from the Bible, don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. And of course, subscribe to the Discípulos de Biblia channel so you don't miss the next powerful stories from the Word of God. May you be strengthened and inspired to live with faith and justice.